We have special guest President Trump just gave a press conference about the coronavirus, and so we have Tulsi Gabbard with us, presidential candidate and Congresswoman. Hi, Tulsi. Thanks for coming on the show.
Great to see you.
So tell me about, you have a plan actually to address this. Can you tell me what the plan is?
Yes. President is still talking here as we speak. The main focus here in Washington throughout the last couple of days has been how do we best provide direct support to the American people? We've seen headlines, we've heard about conversations, and obviously seen a massive flow of cash being pushed to Wall Street to try to shore up the crash that's been happening. But as per usual, what about the American people? What about people who are trying to get tested and they can't? What about people who are being told, even as they can't get tested, hey, just go home and self-quarantine for 14 days? What about jobs, school, childcare? I mean, there's so many ramifications to what's happening here. My resolution I introduced yesterday and that I'm encouraging the congressional leadership to include in their package is immediate universal basic payment, $1,000 every adult American across the country per month for the duration of this crisis. When you look at what's necessary for every American to be able to weather this storm, as well as to continue to help stimulate our economy, this is the most simple and direct way to provide that assistance that breaks through the bureaucracy and breaks through the red tape. There are other actions that we need to take. We need to make sure banks are not foreclosing on people. We need to make sure that there are no late fees or charges, whether it's for credit cards or student debt. There are other things that need to happen in conjunction with this. But look, there are people who are trying to buy supplies and they don't know if they've got the money to do so. There are people worried about paying rent and maybe getting laid off at the same time. This immediate universal basic payment will help to provide that layer of security and peace of mind during what is a very uncertain and scary time for a lot of people.
So now I just read the headline. You talked about it, that they just pumped $1.5 trillion at the snap of a finger into the banking system. They didn't pump $1.5 trillion into the pockets or bank accounts of average Americans, which is what actually we need. They're doing, they're doing this trickle down thing. They're not doing demand. They're not doing what FDR would have done. So how much money would this cost? This idea, this UBI is what this is. You give everybody $1,000 a month. So is that, I'm not a math surgeon, but that's $350 billion a month, or is it more than that?
I can pull the exact numbers. I don't have them in front of me right now, but it's less than what they've delivered in this $1.5 trillion.
Right.
But it really depends on the duration of this crisis. But I think by doing this now, once again, it's interesting how they always start asking, how do you pay for things when you're talking about actually having our taxpayer dollars go towards serving the needs of the American people, but they never pay for it when you talk about why we're spending $4 billion a month in Afghanistan. They never talk about, well, where is that money coming from and what good is being accomplished by the expense of those dollars, what to speak of the American lives and lives of the people in Afghanistan. And of course, they're not asking about what the economic ramifications are of this massive influx of cash to Wall Street. I mean, that in and of itself will have long-standing ramifications on our financial systems that further props up these big Wall Street banks that are even bigger now than they were when they were too big to fail, rather than saying, hey, why are you not prepared for this situation? They have capital, they should use it, not rely on taxpayers to bail them out once again.
I couldn't agree with you more. So just to get back, so I just watched most of the press conference from President Trump. So what is he not doing? What is he leaving out? And what should we be doing?
So he's obviously declaring a state of national emergency. I think this allows for more opportunity to break down some of the bureaucratic and red tape barriers. So on its face, I think this is necessary. It's in the details of how exactly he's going to use it that I really want to take time to examine further. I think the number one area still that remains a problem is that anyone who is not feeling well or who has potentially been exposed to a confirmed positive coronavirus case You've got to be able to get tested easily and not have to wait for a doctor, not have to wait for approval from a state Department of Health or bureaucratic agency, which is exactly what's happening in my home state of Hawaii right now. And I am infuriated because we've known and we've heard about these bureaucratic hurdles. A friend of mine, longtime family friend, just texted me, went to the local urgent care because he has been exposed to someone who is a confirmed coronavirus case. He has traveled to at least one of the countries of concern. He is sick with a sore throat and a cough, and yet they won't test him. He has an elderly, his mother-in-law lives with them in their home. He has 5 children. And the last thing he wants to do is to go home and self-quarantine, as they're telling him to do, without testing for 14 days, at risk of exposing and putting his mother-in-law's life in danger. So he's just to finish this up, he's been there at urgent care now for the last 2 hours. They have told him no. He's called the CEO. We're calling the CEO. We're trying to get to the bottom of this. 5 more people have come to try to get tested who are sick and have been turned away. And urgent care called the cops on him.
What is going on?
It's just madness. So this is where, for all that President Trump is saying that it's been a little inconsistent, first saying everybody who needs to get tested should get tested, but then saying not everyone will be able to get tested. This is a massive failure, especially given what we've seen in countries like South Korea that are testing thousands of people every single day across their country, and they're seeing the numbers of those who are testing positive starting to drop, rather than what I fear we have here in the United States, because so few people have been tested that we are likely to have more cases and therefore more exposure than we're even aware of.
So why is it South Korea can handle this better than the United States? Why they don't have more resources than we do? Why is it they can get testing to everybody and the Trump administration can't?
This is the question that I and others, we've been pushing the administration on in open door and closed door sessions, saying, why is this the case? Why don't we buy their testing technology? If they've come up with it faster than we have, let's buy it and use it here. And frankly, we get no answers. We get answers just as we've heard today from Dr. Fauci. The systems have failed. We need better systems. Got it. When are you going to put those systems in place? Give me a date and a timeline for when any person, whether it's myself or anyone else who has been exposed or who is sick and who needs a test, can drive up and get the test to protect their loved ones and to protect their community. Thus far, we have still failed to see this executed, even after days and weeks of promises that this would be the case.
Has Andrew Yang, do you know if he's come out in support of your UBI idea for this coronavirus?
I don't know for sure, but I believe he has.
Okay, great. Hey, listen, so there's another part to this. So we have sanctions on Iran. Iran is dealing with the horrible outbreak of coronavirus, and our sanctions are making it worse, not better. We're not trying to help. Can you speak to that, please, and the craziness around it?
I mean, Jimmy, you and I have talked so many times understanding that foreign policy is inseparable from domestic policy. And in this case, where we are facing, all of us, this global pandemic, we're just a plane ride away from any other country around the world. So by continuing to keep Iran in isolation, sanctioning them, putting a boot on their throats, making it difficult, if not impossible, for them to be able to get the supplies and the resources needed to help contain the coronavirus outbreak that they are seeing, we're not only leaving the Iranian people at risk, it is the people across the Middle East and ourselves who face an increased threat because of this. It is in our best interest, in their best interest, in the world's best interest to lift these sanctions on non-military equipment, weapons, etc., to be able to make sure that these countries can get the medicine, the medical equipment, the personal protective equipment that they need. Countries like Iran and Syria and any others who are facing this global pandemic, but don't have the ability really to be able to get what they need to protect their people.
according to the LA Times, Trump is forbidding states from using Medicaid funds to fight the coronavirus. So it's obvious to me that the Trump administration is not only not up to this, but they're going to make it even worse, and it's going to be horrible. So what can we do?
I haven't read that article. I would just fact check that because I've been told the exact opposite in a briefing by Vice President Pence in person directly, that if you are, as well as some of the other administration officials, that if you have insurance, obviously you should be able to get tested, is what they say. Medicare and Medicaid will pay for, if you're on Medicare or Medicaid, that should cover the cost of the test. The legislation that we look to be voting on, it's going through negotiations now here in Congress, hopefully later today, also includes that every single test will be free for everyone, no matter who you are or your circumstance.
Okay, well, I'm just it's the headline today in the LA Times saying that Trump administration blocks states from using Medicaid to respond. So that's a headline. I haven't had time to read the story. I just saw the headline.
I'll check it out. Whether the one I know is specific to testing.
Mhm.
There may be other areas that they're referring to, or maybe the wires have been crossed yet again. I think this is part of the problem, is the muddled criteria and guidance and information flow, I think, has created a lot of other problems that have stopped us as a country from being able to implement the most basic steps necessary to get people tested so they can protect themselves and their community.
So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I want to jump up and down and scream as loud as I can or do something, because it's crazy that I watched them ask at the press conference, at what point will people be able to be tested? And they have no answer. So there's not even the minimal response to this is not even happening from the Trump administration. They have zero answers. They can't tell you when there'll be a system in place. They don't even know what kind of system. They can't answer you why. So, but is the Congress now going home for a recess right now?
Yesterday was supposed to be the last day of votes. We are all still here. Both the House and the Senate are here today. We're hoping to be able to get the House Democrats and Republicans are negotiating. They're negotiating, I believe, with the Senate as well as the administration to get a bipartisan direct aid package for individual Americans passed as quickly as possible. The Senate canceled their recess next week to be able to do so. We should stay here for as long as it takes to be able to get this done, to make sure that there's paid sick leave for people who are told you got to go home for at least 14 days, or if you're sick, go home until you're well, and then 14 days after that. We cannot be in a situation where people are concerned if they'll be able to pay the rent, or even have to think about, well, I'm feeling a little bit sick. Maybe I have to go to work anyway because I don't know how I'm going to pay the bills. So paid sick leave, plussing up unemployment insurance for those who get laid off or lose their jobs for some reason. But again, I'm really pushing hard for this universal basic payment because it will be the most simple, direct, positive impact for every single American to be able to shore up whatever they need to weather this storm.
So I just can't get over the lack of response. I mean, we knew this was coming. They did nothing. We don't have testing. Cleveland Clinic came up with a new test that is much faster. You can know in 8 hours instead of 4 days. Okay, so you're not in the debate this Sunday. You've been excluded from the debate. Now, this is the exact kind of thing that you're going to be talking about in a way that Joe Biden and Bernie isn't going to be talking about, and especially connecting our foreign policy to our domestic policy. How frustrating is that for you, and what do you think voters should do?
Voters are the ones who lose out in this, Jimmy, because there'll be this debate there on Sunday. I guarantee, based on past track record, you're not going to hear a lot about foreign policy. And I think even related to the coronavirus, if it's brought up, it will be kind of the cursory talking points that we've heard a lot of, rather than the very real practical ramifications of both what's being done right, but also what's being done wrong, and therefore how we fix it. If we have leaders who are not able to connect these dots and recognize and drive home the point. Foreign policy is inseparable from domestic policy, and the moderators clearly are not pushing this point forward, then again, it is the American voters who lose in this process because they don't have the information that they need to be best equipped to make this very, very serious decision.
And you're the only one speaking clearly about the election interference that's coming from our intelligence community and from our media, right? No one else will say that. In fact, the both people on the debate stage on Sunday are going to prop up that bogus narrative, which is another reason why I'm glad you're staying in the race, because you're, and you gave me a chance to vote for you in my conscience. And I just want people to know I'm a donor to Tulsi, so just so everybody knows. And So that's not going to happen on this Sunday. They're not going to talk about the actual meddling in our elections. They're not going to talk about the way you're talking about coronavirus and what's. So why do you think you're being excluded?
I think there's probably a number of reasons, but when you challenge the power with the truth, and the power includes the powerful politicians, the powerful parties, the powerful media, the elite here in Washington, they don't like it much. And we've seen that from day one of our campaign, where they have tried to either completely black out or silence my candidacy, the message that I'm bringing to the American people, or have tried to smear and undermine me in order to foment suspicion or doubt or fear in people's minds. When you threaten the very foundation of their power with the truth, and people being empowered themselves and knowing the truth and therefore being able to make decisions accordingly, we see the kinds of tactics that they've chosen to use.
Now, we know that the Sanders campaign was in close coordination with the Hillary Clinton campaign prior to the convention in 2016, to the point where the Hillary Clinton campaign was using Bernie's email list to send out messages directly from Robbie Mook to his delegates. So they're not they're not above working with the opposition. I want to know, have they reached out to you during this primary campaign to have some kind of coordinated progressive kind of strategy or any kind of thing? Because he doesn't even seem to mention you. No. Joe Biden's his good friend, but you're the one who nominated him in 2016, and he doesn't seem to remember you're running.
No.
Oh, okay. All right. That's too bad. You would think that would, their ground game is really horrible. I don't know if, okay. Tulsi, thank you so much for taking time, and thanks for having a clear plan to address this. That's a great idea. I hope that the other two candidates join on to your UBI idea. I hope that the news media pushes it, and I hope that they elevate your voice now, because again, you're the real leader. You're showing real leadership at every turn, and you have strength, which is what people like, and you're a truth teller, and you're not bought. And so I just want to say thanks for your leadership during this coronavirus outbreak.
Thank you, Jimmy, and thanks for continuing to bring your voice out and helping people be better informed about what's really going on.
Okay, take care. Thank you.
Talk to you soon.
All right, so that was Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard, and presidential candidate with real solutions to these problems. So we'll see what happens. And, she speaks really clearly, always about everything. Hey everybody, the next live Jimmy Dore show is May 1st in Minneapolis, and then we're going to Chicago. Go to jimmydorecomedy.com for a link for all the tickets to all our live shows, and become a premium member at jimmydorecomedy.com/join. We give you hours of bonus material every week. Thanks for your support.